Hello, my name is James, and for around a decade, I've lived with schizophrenia. I've watched many content creators on YouTube share their own experience and struggles with the illness. I've watched many of these videos. They inspired me to tell my own story. The story of my first episode, Psychosis. Viewer be warned, this is a really long story. I think I will begin the story back in 2009, 2013, and I'm going to start there because these were happy times for me, and because it was before the prodromal phase. So that provides a comparison before schizophrenia or before the first episode, Psychosis, and after. So we have a comparison group. In a lot of ways, the time period 2009-2013 also represents what schizophrenia stole from me. I remember being full of hope the day I started my undergrad at York University's Glennon College in Toronto, Canada in 2009. I remember having so much optimism, and I was very eager to meet people and to prove myself academically. I made lots of friends. Those 4 years of undergrad are so striking to me now because I remember being so happy back then, and I remember I laughed a lot. I had so many friends. I was close to so many people. My life was overflowing with people. I was so happy. I was so happy I actually didn't want to go home. I was on campus every day, Mondays to Friday, and I was on campus from 8:30 in the morning, and I would stay on campus as late as midnight, sometimes even to 2 a.m. When I have an exam, I'd sleep overnight on campus, the night before on campus. Uh, there were plenty of couches, chairs, tables, and benches inside the main building to sleep on. Plus, the campus never closes. Not even on Christmas or New Year's Eve. I've spent many Christmases and New Year's Eves on Glendon campus. Although I'm not homeless, that's how much I love the place. On the weekends, I'd be on campus from noon until midnight. That is how much I love being on. Like I said, that's how much I love being on Glendon campus. I studied on and socialized on campus. That's all I ever wanted to do during those years: do my schoolwork and hang out with people. That is where my life happened. I went home, my real home or house, only to sleep. I also graduated in the top two of my class in 2013. I had straight A plus average. I had straight A pluses, and I had an A plus average. But I was only admittedly number two. Um, for my master's degree, I went to Canada's top school in my field. The real number one, well, she went to Harvard. I'm not bitter. I can't afford Harvard, and neither did I want to leave Canada. So life moved forward, and I moved to Ottawa for my master's degree. It was during the fall of 2013 that the troubles began. However, it was not yet apparent to me that they were troubles. You see, I grew increasingly suspicious and paranoid of my classmates. But at this point, it was only my classmates that I was suspicious towards. Here, I made this table to reconstruct the development of my psychosis.
So, in this table, we have symptoms like hygiene deterioration, oversleeping, insomnia, paranoia, anhedonia, delusions. Uh, you have the years. Kind of reminds you of a time series. And the checks show you when they start appearing and the intensity. It also shows you when they go on remission and when they were simply ideations. So I developed an increasingly unshakable feeling that my classmates don't like me. In fact, my intuition informed me that they were talking behind my back and they're trying to embarrass and humiliate me. I also developed the impression that they may be coordinating their harmful actions against me. I became suspicious of my classmates. I had paranoid and persecutory ideations. I'm holding off calling it delusion at this point, but I was certainly getting there, getting to the point of just completely delusional. I had feelings of um, victimization because it felt like I was being victimized. Still, the experience was rather mild um, for the paranoia and the persecutory ideations, and I forged ahead. I coped with the suspiciousness, feelings of victimization, and paranoid and persecutory ideations by avoiding people. That is, I began and increasingly resorted to social withdrawal. These were already present by the middle of my first term of my master's degree, which is the fall of 2013. Um, this pattern actually continued into 2014. It was still pretty much the same pattern, but I explained the whole experience to myself as my classmates being jealous of me, or it was just the hyper competitiveness of the program. It turns people into mean spirited and just awful people. That's how I reasoned it. Um, I did still have a few people that I interacted with simply because I saw them as true friends. It was during the summer of 2015, though, that something changed. Something significant changed. By April 2015, I completed my master's degree program and I was waiting to convocate in June. I also started oversleeping. Uh, Before, I did not see the point. I mean, throughout my master's degree and my undergrad programs, I did not really see much point in sleeping unless it was necessary. But I but by around the early summer of 2015, I started oversleeping like 8 to 9 hours. I thought I nearly overworked myself during the past 6 years, the 6 years that came before that, and my body just wanted to make up for the lost sleep. I also noticed that my interest in my passions and interests began to wane. Um, I started having thoughts that maybe I was getting a little sick of it. Um, it was no longer at the same intensity as it was during the past 6 years. Who knows? Maybe I was burned out, but I thought it was a significant change. I was still interested in politics and economics, but it was weakening. So there's the loss of interest starting. It was still mild. It was anhedonia. Um, the same paranoid and persecutory feelings and ideations towards my classmates persisted. They're still there, but it was also still mild. I would develop a grandiose. Actually, something else is significant is that I developed a grandiose and or religious delusion, ideation and delusion combo around this time, which I would not snap out of until late 2017. I was. The story is I was taking a shower one May morning, and in the middle of my shower, the idea popped in my head for a way to solve the Mundell-Fleming trilemma. I was convinced I developed a solution to the Mundell-Fleming trilemma. If you studied international economics, you would know exactly what that is. Anyway, the religious part of the delusion is that I believe God chose me to solve it, um, then derive various new economic theories from the solution, and become not only a Nobel laureate, but also become one of the top, if not the greatest economists of the 21st century. So, what do I decide because of it? I decide I need to do my PhD, fulfill my destiny, and show everyone. There is one more thing that happens during that summer. I would figure it out a year later, but I actually have my first auditory hallucination. I've it's part of my personality is to avoid conflict with people. However, I thought I heard two of my housemates saying awful things about me one evening. When I confronted them about it, they denied it. The whole thing did end up resulting in a shouting match in, between me and them, in which one of my housemates actually accused me of having an auditory hallucination. I dismissed it at the time because I, I felt sure that didn't happen. Like, I mean, I've never experienced an auditory hallucination before, and I was pretty sure it didn't happen. Uh, Third, my paranoia was by then strong enough to persuade me that what I was accusing them of really did happen. After the summer of 2015, I decided to return home to Toronto, find work, any work, and then return to do my PhD. I found a job in manufacturing, which I didn't really intend to stay in. I was just passing time until I do my PhD, which I plan to begin in the fall of 2016. In this job, in the job, I also had suspiciousness, um, and paranoid and persecutory delusions, but this time it was towards my coworkers. I actually considered quitting many times, but in the end, I was laid off, and the reason given was lack of work. The reason they gave me was lack of work. 2016 is when things become serious. The voices increased in frequency. Um, the voices were not commanding, that is telling me to do anything. They were not telling me to do anything. They were not talking to me directly either. Instead, the voices it manifested as a discussion between two or more people. The voices were talking about me, and they were very critical and negative towards me. I was so annoyed and bothered by the voices that I went looking for the physical source of the voices. Yet no one was home. When I looked for them, for these voices, I couldn't find the source. No one was home. We owned no radio. The TV and computers were off. There was no neighbor around, and neither were my parents home. This actually happened twice. And after the second time, I realized something was actually happening to me. So I called Telehealth Ontario, and they referred me to Fred Victor, which is a social service charitable organization. They sent me a case manager who guided me throughout the entire process. On reflection, it was good timing. This is because at this point, the paranoia, persecutory delusion, and auditory hallucination was acute and severe. So it was good timing that I got a case manager at this point. I I believe there was a conspiracy at work by my coworkers to try to kill me. They kept offering me a ride home. My coworkers kept offering me a ride home after shift. And to me, this meant that they were going to offer me a ride home, but they actually planned to drive me to a remote field. In the remote, secluded field, they would take my life and leave my corpse to the wilderness. I believed my life was in danger, and that it was only a matter of time before they succeeded in their plot to kill me. At some point, I even believed that the conspiracy against me included my coworkers, my family, the Filipino community, and even random people on the streets. I could hear random people on the streets speaking ill of me and conspiring against me with everyone else, with the rest of the world, actually. I really believe in that. Like, literally everyone knew each other somehow, and it all made a lot of sense to me. I believed it. In my fear and outrage, I searched for a gun on the internet because I wanted to protect myself. Um, I thought I may have to strike first, which meant go to work and shoot all my enemies, who were my coworkers, before they could do harm to me. Fortunately, I was broke at the time. And could not afford a $5,000 handgun. Anyway, my case manager decided to take me to a hospital emergency where the psychiatrist diagnosed me with psychosis not yet determined. The psychiatrist prescribed me 1 milligram of risperidone, which was to be increased to 2 milligrams, and sent me home. To my surprise, I'm surprised because um, when you're a threat to yourself or to others, you're supposed to be. What I know now is you're supposed to be hospitalized, to be admitted in the inpatient unit. Anyway, I tried to relax and have enough recovery afterwards in preparation for my PhD. Overly optimistic, I returned to Ottawa for my PhD. Thanks to the medications, the voices stopped. They did actually stop at that point. Unfortunately, the moment I moved to Ottawa mid-August, I abruptly stopped the medications, and I was overwhelmed by the withdrawal symptoms, such as not being to sleep for 2 days. Yeah, the insomnia was due to the non-compliance. Um, And then I also developed cold feet as I dreaded the return of my symptoms during my PhD program, which would doom my quest for my PhD right from the very beginning. So I had a good cry lasting days and decided to bail out of my PhD program even before it began. I returned to Toronto and went back on my medications. The reason I didn't want to take the medications were the metabolic side effects and the sexual side effects. I gained 15 kilograms within a month of taking risperidone. The sexual side effects deprived me of the pleasurable sensation from stimulation. Regardless, I went back on the medications. I also went back to the manufacturing job I was working in. The paranoid feelings towards my coworkers remained, but no longer as intense, and I knew it's most likely from schizophrenia. So my insight had actually increased. I never tell my coworkers or classmates about these things because I don't want to scare them. But anyway, a consequence of the paranoid ideations, persecutory ideations, and suspiciousness was that it resulted in some impairment in my concentration. So yeah, the symptoms caused concentration issues. But it was still pretty mild in 2016. This was mostly due to the scary thoughts and the auditory hallucinations. But by fall 2016, the auditory hallucinations were gone due to the medication. So 2016 turned to 2017. Um, and other than my health issues, I was trying to figure out the direction of my life at this point. By early 2017, I reached the definitive conclusion that I had made a mistake in bailing out of the PhD program. Considering I was chosen by God to win a Nobel Prize in economics, because I believed I solved the Mundell-Fleming trilemma. So I decided to apply again for the same PhD program, and God bless their hearts and souls, they took me back. I felt reassured because January 2017 to August 2017 was relatively stable. The medications were working, I was getting my rest, I was regaining my optimism that I would return to do my PhD. Yeah, the suspiciousness, paranoia, and persecutory delusions were subsiding at that point. So eventually I did once again return to Ottawa the first week of September 2017 to once again do my PhD. My second attempt. This time I felt more hopeful. I was also holding on to what I considered to be my destiny. That is winning a Nobel Prize in economics and becoming one of the greatest economists of the 21st century. This time I got to meet my new psychiatrist in Ottawa. I informed her of my objections to risperidone. She suggested switching to aripiprazole, also known as Abilify. I was enthusiastic. I was glad to be done with risperidone. The academic year began. I met my new classmates. I liked them. I tried to be social with them. I got back into the groove of being an academic. I was increasingly hopeful. I was succeeding with my schoolwork, with being a teaching assistant, and with my brand new social life. By early November, my transition to aripiprazole was complete. Unfortunately, aripiprazole started making me feel weird. It was a type of discomfort I can't quite describe. It felt like anxiety, and it was an ever increasing feeling of anxiety to the point where it felt like I was going to have a panic attack. It became so overwhelming that it started to paralyze my work. The dread got so strong that I increasingly could not get myself out of bed for fear of what the day will bring. In response, I decided to taper down without consulting with my psychiatrist. Before I started tapering down, aripiprazole actually managed to help me understand that I did not solve the Mundell-Fleming trilemma, that I'm not destined to become a Nobel laureate, let alone chosen by God to become one of the greatest economists of the 21st century. So yeah, the grandiose and religious delusion was finally gone at that point. This was all happening within a high-stress academic context with over 1,000 pages of readings per week, and the added stress of teaching 40 students. The psychotic symptoms, minus the grandiose and religious delusion, came back, and this time they came back with a vengeance. By the fall of 2017, which is like around the first term or semester of my PhD, I started believing that the CIA and or CSIS were trying to assassinate me. The department and my classmates were actually trying to help put poison in my coffee. My professor and my classmates were informing the CIA and or CSIS of my movements. Assassins were trying to gun me down as I crossed the park on my way to campus. They were even hiding a helicopter under the bridge. At some point, I just ran into a broom closet inside a building because I felt I was being followed by someone who was going to stab me in the back with a machete. The paranoia, persecutory delusions, and auditory hallucinations returned more severe than ever. They became just so severe. By December 2017, I knew I just had to accept it. I was at a dead end. I was not tolerating my medication. I could not do work. I had to transition back to risperidone to control the severely acute psychosis. There was no great destiny. I decided to withdraw from my PhD program for the second time, and this time it would be permanent. This time I really needed to take my schizophrenia more seriously. I needed time to really recover. By the first week of January 2018, I withdrew from the PhD program and moved back to Toronto. I got my Fred Victor case manager back, and I was assigned a new psychiatrist in Toronto. I was transitioned back to risperidone because I couldn't tolerate aripiprazole. And given my experience with switching medications, I decided against switching to any other medications. That winter, I would restabilize my psychotic symptoms. My suspiciousness, paranoia, and persecutory ideations went back to being mild. My auditory hallucinations, grandiose delusion, and religious delusion went on remission. They went on remission. However, I was also severely depressed at this point, and my mind was plagued with suicidal ideations. By the end of the summer of 2018, thanks to a lot of rest and a lot of crying and a lot of support from people, the suicidal ideations and depression eventually subsided. I also noticed that is when my emotional blunting began. Anyway, I never had any hygiene deterioration throughout my first episode psychosis. The only time I had insomnia was when I decided to be non-compliant with my risperidone. The anhedonia, which is loss of interest, became severe from fall 2017 and continued into 2018. The old interest would eventually be replaced with new interest. There were no visual hallucinations. Referential delusions, thought insertion delusions, or thought broadcasting delusions during my first episode psychosis. These would happen during the second episode, also known as the relapse. However, the relapse don't happen until August to September 2024. And that is a different story which I would like to tell at some point simply because the delusions and hallucinations are much more bizarre and acute than the first episode.
I hope that listening to the story of my first episode, Psychosis, will be of help. Thank you.